Welcome to Think Tank, powered by Vodacom. I was going to make a point about humble pie and Loot Diache, but as you can see, the BRG already finished it up, so no point over there. You said Loot Diache was about as useful as a waterproof towel or something like that, and the boy was amazing against Australia.
Pencil with a rubber on both ends. Yeah, no, sure, but eating humble pie there.
Yeah.
Also thought Skull couldn't play 8, my oath.
Yeah, fair enough.
Both of them, exceptional.
Yeah.
Really good,
yeah.
Especially Lut. And 9 minutes, somebody said 18 minutes. So let's call it a round total of 15 minutes of rugby this year.
Yeah.
And to come in and put a shift like that in is incredible. He was fantastic, as was the side, I think.
Right.
I think there's a lot of positives you can take out of that game.
Yeah. On Lut, 63 minutes, 18 tackles, second most in the side. A lot of those hits, positive tackles. That's a real fillip for us going forward.
Yeah, it is. We've been speaking a lot this season about potential lack of depth there. I mean, I'm really pleased to see that Flip has been added to the squad. I mean, It's ridiculous that they couldn't sort that out earlier. But yeah, so that's some added depth. But the fact that Loot played so well, look, I mean, one swallow doesn't make a summer. So let's just see what happens against the big guys this weekend.
Yeah.
But hell of a promising, and he's got such a baby face. I didn't think he could be hard enough. So, yeah, kudos to him. Really good.
Yeah. Just in terms of the performance, a lot of people wringing their hands, pulling their hair out about the loss. I thought it was quite a solid performance, except for the last 20 minutes. Just your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. Mayor comes in for a lot of sticks, sometimes even from this show.
Yeah.
But that was a great game of rugby. The Aussies, when they select a good side like that, Gitter came off for them, Cooper came off for them. They brought the old boys back. It worked for them. Their scrum is not as brittle as it used to be.
Yeah.
In the old days, you'd shove them over. So they got they got probably the best fullback in the world.
Yeah.
So they're a good side at home. And we probably had them, but they burgled it at the death in a great game of rugby where we looked like we could play some attacking rugby. And I think that's positive.
Yeah, well, it actually brings us to the question of the week. You spoke about the best fullback in the world, Israel Folau. Our question of the week comes from Ryan Spencer, and he was saying, are we stuck with using bombs as a defensive strategy? I don't know why, but we were kicking the ball straight down Israel Folau's throat.
Yeah, shame. And, Ryan coming in for a hell of a lot of stick for that kick, but it's difficult to blame only him. Look, one, he hasn't played a lot of rugby himself. And that is the strategy. And I think so the question is pertinent. I think, we take a lot of stick for our kicking game, but as you've pointed out often, is that, that's how you win games of rugby. I still think we kick a lot from 9 and 15, whereas the Aussies and the All Blacks try to kick from 10 and from 12 and even 13, which means that you've got a defence that's up. But once you've kicked on 15 or you're playing off the base from 9, it's a lot easier to defend. And, Folau was on form. You just could not take the ball away from him. Perhaps beyond Boson, maybe. It did seem a little bit silly just to kick on a guy having such a good game.
Yeah, the problem with kicking from 15 is it's very difficult to structure the kick chase. You've only got one or two guys that are onside, and then we've got a guy at fullback who doesn't really have a lot of range on his kicks. What do you think about that?
Hence your one for Frans Steyn to get back in there.
Bring him back.
Yeah, that's now a key thing. What the hell do we do there? Because if Jean de Villiers comes back, I mean, Dallender and Creel are really looking solid.
Yeah.
But, if you're going to bring back a guy like de Villiers, then you're probably going to stick him at 13 outside Dallender.
Yeah.
Creel's probably going to push for 15. But then I think, rather change your kicking game. If you haven't got a Frans Steyn big boot at the back, so what other sides are doing is that they've got guys that are good in the air or big, as you've also pointed out during the season. So they can take a ball, they can make a few yards, break a tackle, so they get go forward ball, and then back to 10 to kick from there. Whereas I think what we're doing is 15 takes the ball, doesn't have opportunities to counterattack and goes for the kick. And we're going backwards in effect.
Yeah, no, I hear you 100% there. We've got All Blacks coming up this week, and they are well versed at punishing poor kicks. Are we going to get found out with our strategy in that department?
I don't think so. I had 2 looks at that All Black game on the weekend. Yeah, can you believe it?
Lots of spare time.
Sleep. She's a flighty mistress, she is. And, they were just brilliant before half-time, brilliant after half-time, and the rest, they were pretty solid. I think, at Ellis Park, we'll be up for it. I think we'll give them a good game. Our traditional game against the All Blacks has been crowd them with an almost impenetrable defence.
Right.
Live off their mistakes. And that's the other thing that we did so well against Australia. Bismarck, even Pollard, even Etzebeth, guys making turnovers. The slightly concerning factor is that we lived off the scraps.
Yeah.
You want to try and make the opportunities yourself. But, it's traditionally been our strategy where we crowd them on an industrial defence and live off their mistakes.
Yeah.
And that kind of game is in place and might work against the All Blacks.
Yeah, I thought our defensive breakdown system was excellent on the weekend. We forced a lot of turnovers there. I think 5 of the 13 turnovers we forced were from the backs. But defensively, line speed and the sort of shape and alignment of our defence at times looked quite ragged to me.
Yeah, I did, and especially in the first 25 minutes. You know, they broke our first line of defence a little bit too easily, be it through Cooper and Gitzer or Folau out wide. And that's where the All Blacks come into their own.
Yeah.
They do not capitalise on something like that. Yeah. So that's where we're going to have to be a little bit more vigilant.
Yeah.
But yeah, our scramble defence kind of managed to keep us in the game. Then plus the turnovers kept us properly in the game. But yeah, that initial breaking of the defence would be a worry for this weekend.
Do you start Flip van der Merwe at lock this week for Victor?
I think you do.
Yeah.
You know, and it's no disrespect to Lut. I mean, 9 minutes of rugby, put in a massive shift. Mayo took a lot of stick for the tranche of bench makers on against Australia. But let's think about it, you know. Matfield injured, Yanni injured, Marcel injured. So they had to be replaced.
Yeah.
The sort of tranche of replacements was actually...
That's French for lots.
Yes. Was actually just Frans Malherbe and Adrian Strauss coming on.
Yeah.
It was silly to bring them on as they go into a scrum. But that said, for 12 minutes, that second front row looked good.
Yeah.
It was only in the last 5 minutes where the Aussies actually scrummed well.
Yeah.
And we must give them credit for that.
Oh, spot on.
So I don't think his bench management was that bad.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of it was enforced.
But isn't that the point? Leading up to a World Cup, you want to find out these things about these guys now rather than in a World Cup knockout match.
You do, but just on that point, you know, especially up front. You know, last week we had lots of discussion about replacing front rows, but it's actually easier to start, especially with the Aussies. I mean, in my personal opinion, I think the front row that comes on to replace the initial front row is better.
Okay.
And you know, you lose a little bit of momentum, you lose a bit of continuity, and it's quite difficult as a bench front row. That's why, you know, in the column that I wrote last week, is that you'd like to see a Malherbe and a Hanke and a Koch given a start with Bismarck. Because that's an only fair way to see if they're good enough.
Yeah.
Coming on with 20 minutes to go, where momentum's shifting all over the time, it's quite difficult.
Yeah. Knuckles. Good game. That's it for this week, guys. Thanks very much for tuning in again. We had some great questions. Unfortunately, we could only get to one, but keep those questions coming through using the hashtag ThinkTank, and we'll see you guys next week after we beat the All Blacks. Until then, ciao.